Welcome, dear viewers, on the Abu Bakr Yendan channel. Ramadan Kareem. We will talk about the nuclear bomb in Hiroshima from Memory of History 1945. Enjoyable viewing. Let us start. In the final year of World War II, the Allies prepared for a very costly invasion of the Japanese mainland. This undertaking was preceded by a conventional and firebombing campaign which devastated 67 Japanese cities. The war in Europe had concluded when Germany signed its instrument of surrender on May 8, 1945, and the Allies turned their full attention to the Pacific theater. The Allies called for the unconditional surrender of the Imperial Japanese Armed Forces in the Potsdam Declaration on July 26, 1945, the alternative being prompt and utter destruction. Japan ignored the ultimatum and the war continued. By August 1945, the Allies' Manhattan Project had produced two types of atomic bombs, and the 509th Composite Group of the United States Army Air Forces, USAF, was equipped with the specialized silverplate version of the Boeing B-29 Superfortress that could deliver them from Tinian in the Mariana Islands. The Allies issued orders for atomic bombs to be used on 4 Japanese cities on July 25. On August 6, one of the modified B-29s dropped a uranium gun-type bomb, Little Boy, on Hiroshima. Another B-29 dropped a plutonium implosion bomb, Fat Man, on Nagasaki 3 days later. The bombs immediately devastated their targets. Over the next 2 to 4 months, the acute effects of the atomic bombings killed between 90,000 and 146,000 people in Hiroshima and 39,000 and 80,000 people in Nagasaki. Roughly half of the deaths in each city occurred on the first day. Large numbers of people continued to die for months afterward from the effects of burns, radiation sickness, and other injuries, compounded by illness and malnutrition. In both cities, most of the dead were civilians, although Hiroshima had a sizable military garrison. Japan surrendered to the Allies on August 15, 6 days after the Soviet Union's declaration of war and the bombing of Nagasaki. The Japanese government signed the Instrument of Surrender on September 2 in Tokyo Bay, which effectively ended World War II. Scholars have extensively studied the effects of the bombings on the social and political character of subsequent world history and popular culture, and there is still much debate concerning the ethical and legal justification for the bombings. In 1945, the Pacific War between the Empire of Japan and the Allies entered its 4th year. Most Japanese military units fought fiercely, ensuring that the Allied victory would come at an enormous cost. The 1.25 million battle casualties incurred in total by the United States in World War II included both military personnel killed in action and wounded in action. Nearly 1 million of the casualties occurred during the last year of the war, from June 1944 to June 1945. In December 1944, American battle casualties hit an all-time monthly high of 88,000 as a result of the German Ardennes offensive. America's reserves of manpower were running out. Deferments for groups such as agricultural workers were tightened, and there was consideration of drafting women. At the same time, the public was becoming war-weary, and demanding that long-serving servicemen be sent home. The 509th Composite Group was constituted on December 9, 1944, and activated on December 17, 1944, at Wendover Army Airfield, Utah, commanded by Colonel Paul Tibbets. 63 Tibbets was assigned to organize and command a combat group to develop the means of delivering an atomic weapon against targets in Germany and Japan. Because the flying squadrons of the group consisted of both bomber and transport aircraft, the group was designated as a composite rather than a bombardment unit. 64 Working with the Manhattan Project at Los Alamos, Tibbets selected Wendover for his training base over Great Bend, Kansas, and Mountain Home, Idaho, because of its remoteness. 65 Each bombardier completed at least 50 practice drops of inert or conventional explosive pumpkin bombs, and Tibbets declared his group combat ready. 66 On April 5, 1945, the code name Operation Centerboard was assigned. The officer responsible for its allocation in the War Department's Operations Division was not cleared to know any details of it. The first bombing was later codenamed Operation Centerboard I, and the second, Operation Centerboard II. At the time of its bombing, Hiroshima was a city of industrial and military significance. A number of military units were located nearby, the most important of which was the headquarters of Field Marshal Shunroku Hata's 2nd General Army, which commanded the defense of all of southern Japan and was located in Hiroshima Castle. Hata's command consisted of some 400,000 men, most of whom were on Kyushu, where an Allied invasion was correctly anticipated. Also present in Hiroshima were the headquarters of the 59th Army, the 5th Division and the 224th Division, a recently formed Mobile Unit 114. The city was defended by 5 batteries of 7 cm and 8 cm, 2.8 and 3.1 inch, anti-aircraft guns of the 3rd Anti-Aircraft Division, including units from the 121st and 122nd Anti-Aircraft Regiments and the 22nd and 45th Separate Anti-Aircraft Battalions. In total, an estimated 40,000 Japanese military personnel were stationed in the city. Hiroshima was a supply and logistics base for the Japanese military. 116 The city was a communications center, a key port for shipping, and an assembly area for troops. It was a beehive of war industry, manufacturing parts for planes and boats, for bombs, rifles, and handguns. The center of the city contained several reinforced concrete buildings and lighter structures. Outside the center, the area was congested by a dense collection of small timber workshops set among Japanese houses. A few larger industrial plants lay near the outskirts of the city. The houses were constructed of timber with tile roofs, and many of the industrial buildings were also built around timber frames. The city as a whole was highly susceptible to fire damage. It was the 2nd largest city in Japan after Kyoto that was still undamaged by air raids, primarily because it lacked the aircraft manufacturing industry that was the XXI Bomber Command's priority target. On July 3, the Joint Chiefs of Staff placed it off limits to bombers, along with Kokura, Niigata, and Kyoto. Hiroshima was the primary target of the first atomic bombing mission on August 6, with Kokura and Nagasaki as alternative targets. The 393D Bombardment Squadron B-29 Enola Gay, named after Tibbetts' mother and piloted by Tibbetts, took off from Northfield, Tinian, about 6 hours flight time from Japan. Enola Gay was accompanied by 2 other B-29s, the Great Artiste, commanded by Major Charles Sweeney, which carried instrumentation, and a then nameless aircraft later called Necessary Evil, commanded by Captain George Marquardt, which served as the photography aircraft. During the night of August 5-6, Japanese early warning radar detected the approach of numerous American aircraft headed for the southern part of Japan. Radar detected 65 bombers headed for Saga, 102 bound for Mabushi, 261 en route to Nishinomiya, 111 headed for Uba and 66 bound for Imabari. An alert was given and radio broadcasting stopped in many cities, among them Hiroshima. The all-clear was sounded in Hiroshima at 00:05. About an hour before the bombing, the air raid alert was sounded again, as straight flush flew over the city. It broadcast a short message which was picked up by Enola Gay. It read, "Cloud cover less than 3/10 at all altitudes. Advice, bomb primary." The all-clear was sounded over Hiroshima again at 7:09. The staff officer went to the airport and took off for the southwest. After flying for about 3 hours, while still nearly 160 kilometers, 100 miles, from Hiroshima, he and his pilot saw a great cloud of smoke from the bomb. Until August 9, Japan's War Council still insisted on its 4 conditions for surrender. The full cabinet met on 14:30 on August 9, and spent most of the day debating surrender. Unami conceded that victory was unlikely, but argued in favor of continuing the war nonetheless. The meeting ended at 17:30, with no decision having been reached. We hope you like it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to press the like button and subscribe to the channel. Abu Bakr Yendan.